This is the latest edition of Front Up, and welcome all our viewers. And today I have an excellent person that we're going to interview, Dr. Peter.
Dr. Professor Peter Morrison.
Professor,
right?
Former Professor
You can just
Peter
call me
Morrison.
Peter.
And what do you do in the real world?
You talking about the real world today or yesterday? Today's real world. I have a couple of hobby jobs, one of which is I'm the world's second oldest ramp agent working for Cape Air at the Nantucket Airline.
That's great, because whenever I go out of here, you're smiling and you carry bags and
That's right.
You say go in this direction and go
delivering that customer service.
Customer service.
Right.
And prior to coming to Nantucket, tell us a little bit about what you were doing and your expertise and such.
Well, I had a whole different career before I moved up in the world to become a ramp agent. I spent about 35 years of my adult life in Southern California working for the RAND Corporation, which
is research and development.
That's right. It's a think tank that does research for the Defense Department, but the part of it that I was involved in was really on the domestic side. So I was doing demographic studies of how the population is changing, how cities are growing or declining, et cetera, et cetera. So that was my former career, and I established at RAND what currently exists as their Population Research Center, and assembled a crew of people who were among the foremost in the United States doing solid research and publishing it in various places. Before coming to RAND, I spent a couple of years in academia. I was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania for 2 years.
A full professor?
No, just a buck assistant professor.
Assistant professor,
right,
okay.
Right, where I taught in the sociology department, and I actually taught statistics to undergraduates.
So
that was a lot of fun.
That's a challenge.
That's a real challenge, yeah. So I kind of came out of that background, spent most of my career in research, working a lot with data from the census. And when I sort of gradually retired from the RAND Corporation, I say gradually because I kind of phased into doing sort of consulting work on the outside as well as continuing doing my work for them, reached a point where my wife retired, and I said, well, now we can finally move to Nantucket full time.
Now, how'd you know about Nantucket?
Well, we had been coming here since the mid-'80s, renting on Pocomo Road, when that was still kind of the I guess the outskirts. It was kind of a no man's land when we first started renting there. We'd gone bicycling there on a first trip to Nantucket. So we'd been coming here for about 15 years or so, renting, getting away as much as we could in the fall. Fell in love with the place and decided that we eventually wanted to move here. But with ties to the jobs in Southern California, couldn't really move here full time until 2005.
2005, yeah. And what's your wife's name?
Mary Warrow.
And she has some important positions around
yes,
town.
she is a somewhat infamous person. She's
I knew I had to ask you
she stirs the pot up a little more than I do. She is, I think, on the contract review committee, and she has gotten involved with a couple of organizations, downtown, and she's, really interested in what's going on, but she doesn't like the winter, so we actually live kind of a bi-coastal life in the sense that we get back and forth to Southern California, where we have kids and grandchild, so kind of back and forth. And with the airline job, you go back and forth whenever you want.
Okay, that's nice. Right. Yeah. You get free tickets.
Just about free. Yeah.
I knew there was a method in your madness.
Right.
You can
I'm not working there for the $11 an hour, Whitey.
Well, I was going to ask you. That's great.
It's a lot of fun. It does give you a certain amount of flexibility. You can just decide, go back and see the grandchildren or grandchild for a couple of days, get on a plane, go there, and if there's a seat available, you get out of it.
It's space available.
Space available. That's right.
Yeah, the other night your wife was up before the Board of Selectmen, and I was running the camera, and she's very articulate.
She is very articulate.
Yeah.
Well, she used to be with the county counsel's office in LA
Oh,
County,
my
so
goodness.
she was dealing with a whole bunch of politicians.
I see.
Egos bigger than anything you've seen anywhere, all colliding.
I wondered where she got all of her training.
Yeah.
She was
yeah.
amazing. Well, anyway, we better get back to you because we're
Right.
interviewing you, not your
Right.
wife, but we've got to get her on one of these days.
All right.
So tell me some more about what you're doing. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Dartmouth College.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Really?
Right. It's. I was an average student there academically. I was an undistinguished, what we used to call a gentleman's C+. I think today it would calibrate as a gentleman's B+, but gentleman's C+. And
so you think it's less difficult today than it was?
no. I mean, B+ would be, just sort of an average. I don't want you to think that a C+ is in today's C+, because that would be below average. I was definitely average, not below average.
Yeah.
But not above average.
Well, then how did you get a PhD if you were just average?
Well, what happened is in my senior year, I didn't know what to do, and I was in a class with a professor who was one of these, guys, you just encounter one inspiring professor during your college years, and that will put you on some kind of a track. So he said, well, I think you should continue your education and go on to graduate school in sociology. I said, really? I said, well, where do you suggest I apply? Because I knew nothing about where to apply. So he gave me the names of 3 schools. I got rejected at 2 of them. I got accepted at 1, and I think I only got accepted because he had written me a very strong letter of recommendation. And when I showed up at that department, the chair said, he said, you've got the worst record of anybody we've ever admitted here. And if it hadn't been for Professor so-and-so who wrote that letter, we wouldn't have let you in here at all. Now get out of my office. I thought, geez, it's a whole new thing, Maybe I should have gone and, gone into the military instead. That was a time when everybody was being drafted. And if you, So anyhow, I got into that department. And it turned out that what they did is they trained people to be demographers there. So that's how I, everything happens accidentally in life. People, you think that kids plan their careers. Well, this is how it unfolds. That's how it unfolded in my life.
That's great. That's great. Now, being a demographer, and you look at Nantucket. Now, have you got any recommendations about Nantucket and what we should do with your kind of work?
Well, I can't say I have recommendations, but I can tell you, Nantucket is distinctive in a couple of ways that really kind of surprised me when I started looking at the data. First of all, it's really a microcosm of what's happening in the United States, especially in the immigrant entry port areas of the United States, the Southwest and the areas that had been traditional entry ports for immigration from around the world. Nantucket has an incredible array of people who have moved here from different parts of the world, and there has been a succession of immigrants. We used to have people who came here from Ireland, and then a few of them would settle, and then now we have a lot of people from the Caribbean and also from Eastern European countries. So, and what happens is, if you look in the newspaper, there's a real barometer of this. We know that there are a lot of immigrants who come and go, seasonally with the jobs, but you'll see that there's announcements of a newborn or someone who's celebrating his first birthday, and you look at who's the parents and who are the grandparents, and you can see that there are connections with all over the world, especially coming out of Eastern European countries. And this is not typical of most American communities. I mean, we think of it as, well, that's the way it is here, but most communities don't have that kind of diversity, and especially diversity of people who are sort of, on the first few rungs of the ladder, working their way up in the world and settling down, forming families, and creating the next generation who are going to trace their lineage, to places other than, the traditional places. So it's kind of an interesting thing. There's another interesting connection that I came upon purely by accident. Little community called Rosedale, Mississippi, about 2,000 residents. It's in the heart of the Mississippi Delta.
Sure.
And it just so happened that I had been there once going through the Mississippi Delta with an old friend of mine.
Right.
And we stopped in Rosedale. This is a guy who helped out in the 1950 census. He's one of the kind of the big figures in my field. He recently passed away. And he said, well, here's Rosedale, Mississippi, and you know, I was here, we taking the census, it's got about, I don't know, 2,000 people, it's about 95% African American. So I come to Nantucket, and I keep running into people from Rosedale, Mississippi. I mean, it's like, you know, maybe one person, but 10 people, 20 people, 30 people. And I actually calculated, I think something like maybe 1 out of every 4 people in Rosedale has in some way been involved with Nantucket, either been here for a period of time or settled here or has relatives here. And that's a purely, you know, accidental kind of, it's an accident of history. But it illustrates a very important demographic phenomenon, which is that there are very powerful friends and relatives networks that connect particular places with other places. And it just happens that, you know, Nantucket is a place that has attracted people from Rosedale. I think I traced it back to something in the early 70s. The original pioneer settler was somebody who works at the Steamship Authority now, or at least last time I looked at it. And there has been this continual evolution of the connection. And you'll find a lot of people here, young people who, you know, come here just because there are jobs, and also there, you know, some other activities that go on that I think most people are familiar with, or at least is on the rumor mill. But that is a phenomenon that arises all over the United States in terms of people moving from one place to another. People from the Dust Bowl migration who moved to Southern California, African Americans who moved from the rural South to Chicago and other major metropolitan centers after, you know, during the war years, World War II, and are now moving back to retire there because they have family connections there. And that kind of is, you know, that's what demographers really get turned on by.
Yeah, I can see you've got that sensitivity to say, hey, I see something here, and that's your training.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You start to recognize the patterns.
Yeah. Because I noticed that we have many Bulgarians here.
Yeah.
And their English is excellent.
Right.
And they sort of network. I've often asked them, well, how did you find housing? Oh, I've got a friend.
Right.
So there's this sort of coordinated activity.
And the key indicator is that when you see, for example, taking the Bulgarian example, the people who are here will all be from the same community in Bulgaria.
Same community.
Yeah, because they heard about it from somebody. The word got out. They said, come to Nantucket. There's employment opportunities during the summer. Now, it's not so true today in today's economy, but that's kind of the way it works.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, Nantucket really, it is, you know, it illustrates a lot of demographic phenomena that have resulted in how the United States got settled through immigration in the past.
Oh, yeah. You suddenly, a light bulb went on. My family used to live in China, and then you'd ask these people, the Chinese over here, where they came from, and they all came from the same town outside of Shanghai.
That's right.
That was, I'll be daggone. That's great. Now, what else have you observed around here as far as your profession is concerned?
Well, I have to say it's awful hard to find your way around here without street signs. But then you get good at it, and I had an interesting experience. I was going up, I was actually just turning onto my residential road, Eat Fire Springs Road, and there was a guy there, it was a couple months ago, with one of those big, you know, the Census 2010 little knapsack, and he was, you know, kind of standing there scratching his puzzled, and he said, I said, can I help you? He said, well, I'm trying to find out thus and such where this road goes, and you know, there's no signs anywhere. Yeah. And I said, well, you know, I said, having served on the Census Bureau's Technical Advisory Committee in the past, and being a resident of this road, I said, I think I can help you. I said, you know, if you go up here, it kind of squiggles around, and then it turns into this road and then that road, and there's no signs. And he was just delighted. He said, I'm going to put you down here on this thing as a knowledgeable local resident on the road, because this is a guy who is from off island. You know, they had to fly these people in. What he's doing, this is a couple months ago, you know, he is doing an inventory of dwelling units. He's trying to say, here's every place that we want to either send a form to or knock on the door when we take the census to be sure we found any place where people might live. Now, he's not going to pick up, you know, the underground places that people did, like that guy a couple of years ago, but any place anybody lives, they're out to find where the dwelling unit is, and then they want to be sure they get that census form to the people who live there, or somebody who will say that's a seasonal residence, there's nobody there now, won't be anybody here till June or something, you know, so they can mark it down as that.
Yeah, I remember in the past when somebody says, well, where does so-and-so live? And I said, it's next to so-and-so's house.
Right.
There wasn't any knowledge of streets or anything. The streets are a recent acquisition, except for Main Street and Pleasant Street. But you get outside, and I mean, I was surprised to find out what road I lived on.
Well, it's one of the charming aspects of Nantucket. But you asked me also, you know, what else is distinctive about Nantucket? And I can tell you, I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and there was this very bright graduate student who's doing her PhD dissertation, and she's doing a thing on rural America, all the rural counties in the United States. And she's got a way of classifying them in terms of, you know, they rank on a scale that she's developed of high amenity, you know, great place to live, place to go if you want to have, you know, retirees. And I said, well, this is a really interesting thing. I said, could I get a copy of it? And I gave her my card, and she said, oh, you're from Nantucket. She said, you know, Nantucket was the #1 county on the scale, you know, the 2,300 counties I looked at. I said, well, you know, I said, I can tell you why, because one of the factors in your scale is the, you know, highly appreciated real estate values. I said, that's probably driving everything. I said, you know, we don't have any scenic views of mountains. It is a scenic place to live, but that's probably what's going on. And if you ever need to know anything about Nantucket, you know, let me know. I'll be happy to fill you in. But it is interesting that Nantucket ranks toward the top on some scales and at the very top of this scale as, I think it was, you know, a combination of high amenity and apparently very attractive to people who want to retire somewhere. And so there you go. You know, we're at the top of the list.
Yeah. I'm always interested in the fact that you've retired here, what you do, and your background. And I wish there were more people around that have retired here that would get as involved in the town as you have. I mean, I know that when we put on our Scallopers Ball, you were a ticket taker.
Yeah, well,
and you did a wonderful job as a ticket taker. And
well, it doesn't take much skill. I mean, people walk in and you take their ticket.
Yeah, but you had to collect money. You had to stop the interlopers. You know, it was. I had to put a PhD in charge of the gate to make sure that it was properly run.
Right. Well, we maximize things there.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Well, Peter, it's been nice having you here, and I enjoy it, and I hope you'll be back with more information on the demography of Nantucket. I think everybody will be interested in some of your observations.
Okay, it's been my pleasure.
I think it's unique. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Whitey.
Right.